I think one thing as I get older, I'm learning is I truly need to listen to my own body and to be my own guru.
Detailer's Roadmap Cruise Control, where we navigate the roadways of life, business, and everything in between. Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Cruise Control Podcast. Today we're going to be here with Nick McGurk, which is super exciting. I'm so excited to do this episode. We are going to do something that I've never done on this podcast before, which is basically do a dual episode. So you're going to see this on both channels. We'll have a little bit of a different intro. We'll have a different conversation at the beginning, but he and I were just going to sit and shoot the crap for an hour and a half. Or whatever, however long it takes. We could do like Joe Rogan 3.5 hours, but I don't know. I'll have to bring.
I love the Bill Murray one comes on Joe Rogan. He's like, I've never heard your podcast before. Probably the first person to ever say that to Joe Rogan.
Well, I don't listen to this podcast, so
unfortunately, neither of us are that cool. But hey, maybe one day the detailing industry is on the rise.
There you go. We'll be there for sure. But hey, man, thank you for coming on. Before we get started. Detailer's Roadmap, go to detailersroadmap.com. We do kick-ass websites in SEO. Go to that website, use that little book a demo button there at the top. One of our salespeople will walk you through your entire website. We may not be the right company for you. You may not be ready for us. We'll walk through that. Those guys will do what they do, and they'll really help you out. So go to detailersroadmap.com. Use that up there. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, review, all of those things to make sure we get this podcast out to more people. So thanks, Nick. I appreciate you coming on board, man.
I appreciate it to be here. If we're doing plugs, the House of Rags sponsors this podcast. So go to thehouseofrags.com and use promo code Nick at Night, NICKATNIGHT, for 10% off your purchase there. It's a way to say thank you. Also subscribe to the House of Rags and also the Detailer's Roadmap. Let's get all that crap out of the way, so we can get into
Someone's got to pay for this thing, right?
Hey, let's be honest. Detailers out there, they know there's a cost to everything. And
that's right.
There's a cost for your chemicals. There's a cost for your time. There's a cost for the person who calls you and asks for a service, right? And anyway, someone's got to pay for it.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, I was thinking instead of doing a bio, like I've got your bio, you have my stupid bio.
I read your bio. It's long.
Let's. One of the things I really like that we started, and I don't even know why I started this, but I started doing these superhero backstories. Basically the idea is that we all have this backstory, especially the detailing world, right? And guys that are a little bit more forward facing, like you and I. Most of the time when you tell, like you sent me this bio yesterday, I'm like, holy crap, this is awesome. Right?
I actually felt much better about my life when I wrote it out.
That's right.
I was like having a rough day and I was like, oh, I actually
have accomplished something.
I've done something with my life. Okay. Like, let's keep going.
So, but I really like what I want to do is I like it when people get an opportunity to hear who we're talking to. And this is a little different for the two of us because it's like interview the interviewer, right? Like we don't normally talk about ourselves at any length, typically with this kind of stuff. So is that moonshine, by the way? It's in this little mason jar.
No, it's white, and then I have some like electrolytes in there, so it looks a little opaque. So I mean, who knows what I'm drinking?
When you watch this on video, it'll make more sense. But he's literally, I'm from Oklahoma, so that's typically what they drink moonshine out of. So I mean, that's
I love a good mason jar, man. It comes with some honey in there, whatever you got, and then you can reuse it for whatever you want later.
No BPAs, no plastics, none of that kind of stuff.
This is
right?
You got a podcast called the Man.
Maxed out man. That's my other one.
Yeah. A maxed out man's not drinking out of plastic. Come on now.
That's right. No, and I'm not drinking moonshine either. Frankly, I don't drink alcohol. So
When's the last time you had a drink? I have not had a drink in probably 2-3 years.
I haven't had one in 40 years.
Yeah.
Like when I was 12 was the last time I had alcohol.
Really?
Of any like. When we go out or whatever, and somebody will have like an interesting drink, I'll take a little sip of it. My wife's allergic to alcohol, so she doesn't drink at all.
Okay.
And so it's just not something that she bakes a lot with it, but it's just not something we, deal with.
Do you have any interesting vices or things that like occasionally you do to like enhance your mood?
Sugar. I mean, not really a mood enhancer. I'm just totally addicted to sugar.
Okay. So you're not perfect. You're not trying
100% not. But just, you want me to bring my wife in here? She will give you a list. It'll take an hour and a half for her to tell you how imperfect I am.
Okay.
No, sure. Like she'll to the point. So my wife's a baker, which makes having a sugar addict in the house really convenient for me. she locks up stuff in. We have 2 lockable freezers and we have 2 lock boxes in the pantry to keep. We call him Kevy. So at 2 a.m, little fat Kevy gets hungry and wants to eat whatever sugar is available. That's my thing, right? So she has to lock it up. That's the only way to keep me out of it. That's my deep dark secret, So,
well, because you may have seen this guy, Brian Johnson. He's Don't Die, Live to 120, whatever his whole thing is. But he's got a Netflix documentary now. He's hit the mainstream. He's got like 1.5 million YouTube subscribers. But he talks about like nighttime Brian.
Yeah,
and he has to like create rules for nighttime Brian because nighttime Brian likes to gorge on food, uncontrollably. So he just like sets rules for him, and I think it's interesting. Like, I lose so much self-control in the evening.
Yeah.
But like, you really have to kind of try to set out parameters for that if you can.
Yeah, and I'm not a great sleeper, and I'm one of those guys. I always talk about a light switch. So literally I'm asleep, and then I'm awake. Like, there is no in between. And so when I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm fully conscious and I'm hungry. And so my brain says, go get, and it's not crazy stuff. Like, I won't go get, cake. But if there is cake, I probably would eat some of it.
What? Wow.
And so like I have to plant for my like macros and all that kind of stuff. If I'm on my macros and on point, then I typically don't do it. But if I miss a few hundred calories in the day, or I don't get my protein or whatever, then I tend to fill that up with sugar. Are
you an intermittent faster? Is that a thing you do?
I've tried it a lot and I get really pissy and angry. And so I need to eat smaller amounts more often, and that's kind of this bodybuilding thing, but it doesn't work for everybody. But I typically will eat probably 6 times a day or 7, depending on, what it is. Have you done that stuff?
I've struggled with being hangry and realizing that not being able to like intermittent fast is probably like a metabolic health issue. So I've really tried to work on that, but I do find that like there comes a point after even 6 or 8 hours where I start to get really upset and angry. And like, if I intermittent fast in the evening, which I'm single, so I can usually do, but if I have my kids, I find that I'm usually not as good of a dad. So I'll try to pick a couple days a week where I do it. And it works better for me to intermittent fast in the evening, then sleep it off, and then break the fast at like 10 in the morning the next day. If I decide to skip breakfast, I really struggle through the day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I probably have the same issues you do. I just pretend that I don't, it's like, yeah, this is hard.
Well, there's nothing, I mean, I think all the studies about IF and intermittent fasting and all that stuff are a little bit skewed anyway. I mean, at the end of the day, the advantage of intermittent fasting, or the supposed advantage of the intermittent fasting, is that it essentially lowers the number of calories you can intake in a given day. But that's a fallacy anyway, because most of the time, if you're only eating for 6 hours, you're just going to eat a whole day's worth of calories in that. You've now got weird insulin resistance and weird insulin response, which is what you're feeling. So your blood sugar drops.
Yep.
Just like with any fasting, if you go 4 or 5 days, your body gets in that ketosis and, all that crazy stuff. So it actually helps.
But is it really happening after 12, 16
hours?
No,
it's not. It really, in my opinion, and the research will say both things. But so my background, my degree's in exercise physiology. So back in the day, I was a personal trainer and read health clubs and all that stuff.
Oh, okay.
This would have been in like the 90s, late 90s. I'm old. So
how old are you? 50?
52.
Okay.
So, but what I found was that over time, you learn that whatever works best for your body to achieve the maximum amount of health and whatever desired outcome you want, that's what you do. My wife is way less carb sensitive than I am. So I just started an 8-week cut for body fat. I've been kind of in a bulking season, which lasted from like Thanksgiving till like this weekend for some reason. Should have lost less than that. But I've been building muscle, but now I'm in a cutting. So I will actually do like, 50% protein, 20% carbs, 30% fat, where she does better if she puts more carbs in. So anyway, all that to say, do what you like. Do what works for you.
I think the great health debate will exist forever on what the best way to eat is. And I think the people who are so firmly entrenched that I have the way and you need to follow it, it's just like you live long enough and you realize like there's a reason why we're all still having this debate. I think one thing as I get older, I'm learning is I truly need to listen to my own body and to be my own guru. And I know that's like sounds so kind of out there, but it's like, I got to trust what my body's telling me. The body will talk to you. How much we push through because we have to is a different story. But I just got off like a 2-week bout with the flu, and leading up to it, my body was kind of giving me signals, and I was like, "No, I'm pushing through. I'm a man. Like I got stuff to do, right?" But 2 weeks with the flu will humble the shit out of you. Pardon my French. And it was really hard. It was really, really hard. And yeah, so I'm just kind of like, trust yourself. You know.
Are you a rester normally?
I'm not like Ivan. I definitely do rest more than like, business partner Ivan LaCroix, DIY Detail. That man sleeps 3-4 hours a night. Like he will outwork anybody. I have a little bit more balance than that. But I've been an achiever my whole life. Like I get stuff done, but sometimes it's not as systematic, and it's more kind of in the manic up and down phase of like, not anymore. I never do this now, but a lot of the ways I would achieve early in my life is like, I'll pull all-nighters or whatever. And somehow that worked. That does not work as you get older. I mean, that is like the opposite of what I want for my life, unless it was an absolute emergency. But yeah, no, I get stuff done for sure. I get stuff done. I'm like a very achievement, goal-oriented, focused person, but like not in the way of everybody. And like, I don't want to be Ivan, and I don't want to be Kevin. I want to be me, right? So it's like, but yeah, no, I do get stuff done, but like if I am struggling and I can't get through and it's 3 p.m., like I'm not going to reach for the coffee. I'll probably take like a 15-minute nap,
Dude,
and I think some people look at naps as like weaknesses.
Naps are
would never take a nap.
Best.
But it's like, but no, I'm just
naps are the absolute best part of being self-employed.
But it makes me better when I just give me a 15-minute pause button, and then I'll be a kick-ass Nick for the rest of the day, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use this, I love naps. That's what I was saying. Naps are the best thing ever. So I use my Oura ring, and I prove to my kids, because they didn't believe me, I'm like, I can go take a nap and it will register 19 to 21 minutes. I never get into deep sleep. I'm up and I'm ready to go. And they're like, you're full of crap. So I came down and I did it 3 days in a row, and it was between 19 and 21 minutes.
Wait, so how do you time the nap? Do you know that?
So this actually will register when I go to sleep. So I know whether or not, if I'm not asleep within the first 90 to 120 seconds when I lay down to take a nap, I'll get back up.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, that's just how my brain works. It's just on or off.
Yeah.
And so this will register when I fall asleep, and then it registers when I wake back up. So I can know. But so the rule that they give you is either basically less than 30 minutes or more than 90 minutes. That's how you have to do your naps, because it's after that 30 to 35 minutes that you get into REM and deep sleep. And if you wake up in the middle of that, like at 45 minutes, then that's when you feel like crap.
Yep.
Like you feel like you need to go take more sleep and all that kind of stuff. I love naps.
So I don't typically take naps. I try to get well rested enough so I can just go through the day. But in these last 2 weeks, and I was like, it wasn't the flu. And then I've had enough people I've talked to. It's like, no, that was like the swift immune response. But it was like 5 days in a row. I wanted a nap for an hour. And that's not like me at all. Like, I don't want to, I need to be functioning and focused. And so that's when I knew my body was like, you're going through it. You know what I mean?
And so you don't get sick normally.
I used to get sick a lot more. Last time I got sick was after SEMA. And
SEMA flu. That's always a good one.
Have you ever caught the SEMA flu?
I have. I actually had it, not this last SEMA, but the year before. Yep. I had it during SEMA, and we were shooting content all day long. And so like, if you saw me at SEMA that year, I was on and then I was out. Like I literally just had enough strength to be on for that 5 or 6 hours. And then I went home, and the rest of the team went out. I was asleep. So I just
and I talked to Todd Helm. So we're like talking some OG names here. Kevin Davis, Todd Helm, because apparently we're all getting old. But I asked Todd about, preserving energy during, and it was like the second to last day, and they had a celebration with Rupes that night. And he's like, I did go out last night. I'm feeling a little rough around the edges today, but it's the first night. I never go out during SEMA anymore. I'm like, you don't go out after? He's like, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And I love that line.
Yeah.
An industry veteran says, because, I look at the networking that can happen after SEMA, the SEMA show in Vegas, as like a really potentially great opportunity to like meet people and network. But there's plenty of networking opportunity during the show, man. I don't know. What are your thoughts on, I'm not saying going out and partying. You could just go out, but it still feels like it's hard on you.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely weighs on you. There was a year where Michelle's had she's had vehicles. My wife has had multiple vehicles in SEMA that she's built or been a part of builds. And so we had a year where we had literally 3 parties a night. So we were going to 3 a night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
And you're not drinking. You're just spending more time going out, meeting people.
Yeah, just talking to people, being seen. We had sponsor commitments and all that stuff because we had some sponsors that we're dealing with this Jeep build and with the rally and some of the stuff that she did. And so that year was miserable. Like, we literally went back to our room. Actually, it was our RV at the time, but we went back to the RV. It was 10:45. We laid down to go to sleep, and someone else texted and said, "Hey, we got this event. Can you come?" So it was like a movie. So we got back up, got dressed, went out, did it again. And like you said, we don't drink. So it's just, which actually helps because then it's kind of lack of sleep, but that's kind of it.
Yeah. So what is your thought now on SEMA? Do you go out at night?
No, we'll go to Rennie's party typically on Wednesday night. And then usually like Justin Day's party, I think is like Tuesday night. Sometimes
so you're still going out.
I mean, but I want to stay for like 45 minutes. Right? Like, I don't want to go and be there for I want to kind of make the rounds and say hi to everybody and, hey, how you doing? And that kind of thing. And then kind of go back and be done. So like, if I had a choice, like, honestly, probably I've been to SEMA 16 years in a row. And I think at this point it's about played out in terms of my desire to go. Like, now I'm representing Detailer's Roadmap and we're kind of going through all that and I'm there to help to shoot content and that kind of thing. But, honestly, I think Michelle did not go the last 2 years. She was like, I'm out. I'm not going anymore.
Well, Michelle is your beautiful and lovely wife who I met 3 years ago. At that SEMA, I did get the SEMA flu. 2 years ago, I didn't get sick. And then last year, I got the SEMA COVID. I think I got COVID 2 out of the last 3 years I went to SEMA.
Well, if you're going to pick up something, because you're tired, you're talking constantly. It's loud. So you're like doing that face talking thing from Seinfeld. And so like you're exchanging spit with people. Oh, that sounds really gross, but imagine that the next time you're talking to someone super close. Yeah. If you go out, they're all super loud. So you're doing the same thing. So like it's the breeding ground. I've gotten SEMA flu twice out of that amount of time. Okay. But that's it. So I'm pretty fortunate.
Well, I know at Rennie's party it was super loud, and so it was like shouting to people. And
this last one was better. That other event being on the inside, I was like, "This is." I mean, you were doing the same thing, like screaming into each other's ears to try to hear each. I'm like, I'm out. This is too loud, Rennie. Chris Woolman, who's no longer helping Rennie, I yelled at him. I'm like, dude, if you do that again, please lower the volume.
Yeah, the venue was better this time. It was cold. But anyway,
it was.
We're getting a little inside baseball on the SEMA stuff. So let's start with like most recent. So you are with Chris DiGiovanni's Detailer's Roadmap. I had him on the podcast recently, so maybe folks kind of know. What is your role with Detailer's Roadmap?
So I have a really long title. It's called Director of Revenue Development and Strategic Partnerships. Okay, so I don't work full time. I'm not in the office. So I do the Cruise Control podcast. So I kind of have this multifaceted role. But when I came into the company, Chris wanted me to come in and look at systems, kind of see whether, see if I can improve it. That's kind of my background is systems and processes and, where are the bottlenecks here? How can we improve this? I'm really good with like language and, you could call it manipulation, but taking customer service situations and changing the way you have the discussion with customers so that it's more of a win-win for everybody. If that makes sense, it's kind of hard to explain, but so I help with some of those communications, part of the sales process, part of the customer service sales process. I do content like do the Cruise Control podcast. And then one of my big roles is to help look for new revenue streams and verticals. But then what I would call my superpower is connections and networking. So I really try to bring that into the business. So like for example, I had dinner with a group of PDR guys at MTE. through a mutual friend of mine, Tony Pando, who owns Dr. Color Chip. And so we started talking. I'm like asking this guy who's a very prominent guy in the PDR industry. I started asking him about the industry and what the technology is and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm going to visit his shop after we go to Corey Carruth's Verge event for C-Corp's Finest. That'll be in DC in a couple of weeks. So long answer, but that's kind of that would be a great example of kind of what I do. And then I'm going to Dallas this weekend to Gas Monkey Garage with System X. We're going to kind of do some stuff with them. Gas Monkey, if you don't know, did the Fast and Loud show on Discovery Channel. I've known those guys for a long time, just through other avenues. But so it'll be fun. We'll kind of go and do that. So that's a long-winded story about what I do with Detailer's Roadmap.
Well, because you've worn a lot of hats and probably still do, and I knew you early on. You know, with the Detailer's Helper belt.
Yep. Which is still a thing. You can go to detailershelper.com.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. We got a promo code for me? Can we get a promo code? 10% off?
Yeah, we'll do. I'll throw in a 20% off coupon for Nick and Chris. You could yell at me later for conflict of interest, but it's okay to talk about Detailer's Helper.
How can they get 20% off the detail? Tell me about the Detailer's Helper belt.
All right, so I'll give you the quick backstory. So I was detailing a '69 GTO black for Barrett Jackson, basically, is what I was doing. And I had just finished the rear quarter. I put my feet under the door and I was like, where is all my crap? Where's my polish and towels and all that stuff? They were on the back lid and the floor behind the car. So I had to get out. Well, I come from a DIY construction background. So I've always had tool belts. It's just electrician. When I do electrical work, I always have tool belts. So I was like, why the hell does this not exist? Found out that there was one that existed, which is a knockoff crappy tool belt that literally will scratch anything. No offense to the people that make that or brand that. And there's now a Chinese knockoff of that same crappy belt. So it's a crappy knockoff of an originally crappy belt. So don't buy either of those.
Perfect.
So anyway, so then I sewed the first one on my sewing machine, my wife's sewing machine, made the belt. We sold a ton of them. It's been on Air Force One and all that kind of. It basically, we showed that it saves like 30 minutes per detail minimum. So you spend 60 or 80 bucks, you'll make about another $3,000 a year by buying it. So the problem we had, like I said before we started, is that it lasts too long. It's made very, very well. I've got guys like Claude Harris in California. It's like, here's my original OG that I bought in 2012. I'm like, thanks, Claude. I appreciate that you didn't spend any more money with me. But it's just, and so it's not a consumable product. So from a brand standpoint, but we have a consumer brand that came off of that, and I have a janitorial brand that also we make private label version of that belt, a totally different brand for like SC Johnson, like the Windex company. So we have, so that turned into, so we make more per quarter from that deal than we probably have ever made for Detailer's Helper, honestly. So
wow, how does all this happen for you?
That one was a weird one. This is kind of an interesting story. So I got reached out by, and it's on the professional side. So SC Johnson basically makes this cartridge type system for cleaning. So you basically have all you need is a water bottle, and then they have these cartridges for, APC and Windex and disinfectants and all that. And so they use them for major stadium cleaning, and the way they used to do it's super inefficient. So I get on the phone with this vice president of acquisitions, of product acquisition, and we're going through this like presentation that she had presented or that she had done, and she's like, "What we really like is this belt right here. We're wondering if you could make me one of those." And I go, "Well, that would be super easy because that's my product that we have a patent for, and I already know how to make it, and I can have you a prototype in like 2 weeks." And so it was just a done deal. And so that, we don't make nearly as much margin on those, but it was they basically just order a few thousand a year, and, we make some money off that. And it takes me like maybe 5 hours a year to sell to them. So it's super easy.
You say your superpower is the networking. Like, I'm wondering what of your gifts we could translate to the masses? Like what do you have to teach about the power of networking, or how it's done well without being, selfishly about me getting something? Like how can they harness what you've learned about the power of connection and networking to maybe further their life or their business?
Dude, that's a great question. So the way I always put it is I have developed, and I had like 8 different schools when I was growing up. My mom basically was, long sad story, but whoever she was shacking up with at the time, that's where we lived. And so I moved a lot. So I had to be able to make connections very quickly, even from like 7, 8 years old on through. So the way I describe it is making a conduit between yourself and, whether it's like a $200 million a year, multi 10-figure guy, or someone that or a homeless guy, whatever. You can use those kind of economic demographics as a basis, is to, you want to be interested in who they are before, without an agenda. Like when I meet famous people or whatever, which we've had the opportunity to do, I'll use the line sometimes like, I don't really care that you're famous. I'm interested in who you are as a person. And I genuinely am. Like I have some people in my world that are way more famous than I'll ever, like they're A-lister kind of people. And we always make a connection because I don't care that they're famous. Like I love for them, as long whatever the good that comes out of that. So when you meet someone, if you come at it like genuinely interested in who they are as a person and what they're dealing with, because we all like, I don't care if you're that CEO or if you're the homeless person, we're all dealing with something. And so figuring out what that is and be able to make that connection. It helps if you know a little bit about a lot of things. I'm kind of a generalist, so I can have construction conversations and money, all of that different stuff. That helps with the diversity. But if you go to like a Chamber of Commerce meeting and you want to talk to a realtor, right? Talking to them about their business and talking to them about, if you're a detailer, talking to them specifically about how they use their vehicle in that business, then that just helps them understand. And remembering that, just like with this podcast, everybody's favorite topic is themselves. People love to talk about themselves. So if you ask about them, then they typically are easier to connect with.
Well, I was going to say, because, there's strategic ways to like ask people about things that they care about. But how do you care about stuff? Like if you're just having a rough day and you like don't really like, there's got to be an element of like faking it. Like you can smile on the phone and people can tell, right? I heard that piece of advice. And that's a good one. That's not being selfish. That's like, how can I show up for this conversation better? But is there a way to like try to care more about somebody that you don't care about in that moment? And for whatever reason, maybe you're having a bad day, maybe you just don't care about them, but you're trying to be a better person. How can you try to care more than you do?
Yeah, I have resting bitch face. I have resting bitch face, so that's always a challenge for me. Yeah. So like, and I stand a lot with my arms crossed. If you're listening to this, my arms are crossed right now.
Poor body posture.
Poor body posture, which is just comfortable for me. I actually am not closing myself off to conversation. Like I'll use a bad behavior example. If someone is in most cases, if someone is an asshole, there's probably a reason that they act that way. Like, they call it her story or his story, right? Everybody has a history. So if I can try to recognize that, hey, what's going on with this person? Like, are they having a bad day or whatever? And just try to be a positive. And you could get kind of woo-woo about this. I'm not really a woo-woo kind of guy. But
I kind of am, so we can go wherever you want.
It's okay. But if you're really trying, like you have to have an empathetic spirit about you to like genuine, because here's the problem is because we, especially as business owners, you have to get out of the, I'm going to make this connection so that, right? You have to get rid of the so that, because if the so that is to sell them something, then you're lost already. If the so that is so that you can make a genuine impact in this person's life, then that's a win every time. Like I want to be. So one of the things I started doing probably mid last year is I try to catch people off guard in a positive way that makes their day better. This episode is brought to you by Detailer's Roadmap. Hey, spoiler alert, that's us. We all know you need a kick-ass website in order to be successful with your business. The good news is at Detailer's Roadmap, kick-ass websites, that's kind of what we do. With the latest performance, designs, and SEO strategies, Detailer's Roadmap is your one-stop shop to be successful on the web. And don't forget, we have the best support team in the industry. Whether you're an existing partner looking to improve your lead generation or you need a brand new website, Detailer's Roadmap is here to help you be successful on the web. So go to detailersroadmap.com/success and get started today. That's detailersroadmap.com/SUCCESS. I'll give you an example. And I do this all the time.
I was going to say, give me an example.
It drives people that I'm with kind of crazy. So I'll get on, I fly a lot. So when I get on a plane, if the flight attendant, there's always somebody right there at the door, right? And they're doing that, same routine, hello, blah, blah, blah. I will pick something out, whether it's like their eyes or a smile or their posture or the way they're greeting people or whatever. And I will just say, hey, I just want to let you know, you have, your hair is so cool, right? Like we were at an event we were at an Audubon event, and there was a girl, a black girl sitting at the bar by herself, right? So there's a story, right? There's already a story as why she's there by herself and all that, which it could have been fine. She had the coolest hair. It was like super curly and had this orange and red and all that kind of stuff. And so what's our normal tendency, right? To maybe think, oh, that girl's hair's cool, and then just keep on going with your life. I stepped over to her and I said, hey, I just want to let you know, I think your hair is so cool. And she said, thank you. And that was it. Right. But hopefully that made an impact on her life in some small way. Like, I don't know if she's eating by herself because she doesn't have any friends or she got stood up for a date or like I don't really need to know that. But trying to do that. And if you practice that, that's something that really can have an impact on your own spirit. Because, dude, seeing that girl smile and say thank you was the best part of my day. Like, it's so huge.
And it didn't cost you anything. And it wasn't like that hard to do either.
No. Right. And it works for our interpersonal relationships too. Like, if I walk through the kitchen, my office is right off the kitchen. If I walk through the kitchen, first of all, it's mandatory that I slap my wife on the ass. That's mandatory. I have to do that.
Is that good for because how long you been married?
Almost 30 years.
I mean, drop some wisdom bombs. I just interrupted the flow of where you were going with that, but I want to know about that.
No, but that's like, if I think to myself the thing is that most of us have these positive thoughts all the time. And most of us forget that other people can't hear them if they're in our head. Right? Like, so, walking through the kitchen, I happen to notice that she and I work out. So if, like, when we're working out, if I notice how awesome her back muscles look, I will freaking shoot a video and show her, this is what I see. Look how amazing these muscles are coming in, because we've both been bulky. And so it's just constantly making that practice. And yes, the answer to your question is that's a moral imperative. If your wife for some reason doesn't like it, we need to, you can kind of work that out, figure that out. But like, or just like putting your arm around her, like kissing her on the neck, all of those kind of things. I can honestly say my marriage is better now than it was 10 years ago, and it'll be better 10 years from now than it is right now. That's what my honest belief.
What advice do you have for, detailers out there who, like me early on, you're kind of deciding on, do I spend time with my family or do I take this on as like a second job and try to make detailing happen at the expense of time, right? And I ended up in a situation where I got divorced. It's a complicated story, but like, I know I can't be alone. And even if it hasn't happened, the big D word for a lot of folks, starting a detailing business, it puts a strain because a lot of detailers spend a lot of time on these cars and you don't get your time back. So I guess you've been in the industry as an OG long enough. Like, what advice do you have for folks out there?
Well, you said it right. You don't get that time back. Right. And so if you have a special project that you need to have done that requires, 3 days, a week or whatever, that requires that kind of sacrifice, and you are sacrificing. There's no such thing as multitasking. You're just prioritizing one thing over another. So if you need to prioritize something for that amount of time, that's great. Just don't keep doing it week after week after week. And have that conversation with your spouse or girlfriend or husband or boyfriend or whatever, whoever it is, kids, to say, look, this is something I need to do for this short amount of time, and then I can do it. And like, let's say, and if you need to do that week in and week out in order to build this side hustle into an actual business, you should give yourself sort of a timeline and be cognizant of the effect. Like just going balls to the wall and giving all of your energy. And we'll get woo-woo again, but you only have so much emotional energy, right? Like you can't give it to your significant other, your kids, your friends, your family, if you've given it all away to this side hustle. Back to
SEMA, like I think part of it that runs me down is I don't do fake very well. So when I'm actually interacting with people and getting to know them and meeting them, like there's just Ivan's a robot. Okay. I don't even know if this man ever needs anything, but for me, because we're standing next to each other the whole time, and it seems like the longer the day goes, the more energetic he gets, But I feel like my energetic battery goes down, and that's what wears me out. Is I'm genuinely giving of myself every time I have an interaction. That's why I try to like be very careful about guarding that energy. But at SEMA, you're just going after it, and you're meeting everybody. It just really does seem like you only have so much, right? And
well, some people,
when I give, I'm genuinely like, I'm there.
That's the thing, though. You just described the quintessential difference between an extrovert and an introvert. An extrovert like Ivan is like plugging the iPhone into the wall when he's having those conversations and interacting with people. So he literally gets charged the longer he does it. That's why after 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, he's still just as good because battery hasn't been drained. Whereas people like you and I don't know if you do this, but I actually, when I'm in like SEMA, for example,
because I'm a performer, right? I like
right. So you get on. Do you do the thing where you're like, I call it being on. So like my personality, whenever I'm in a situation like that, is not 2x, like 1.5x of who I normally would be. Yeah. Right. So you're giving 50% more than you normally would. If you're an introvert, and I'm naturally, believe it or not, an introvert also, which is funny that both of us are more forward facing.
I never thought of myself as an introvert, but now that you're saying this, I'm listening.
That's the quintessential, which is if you are drained by interacting with people, that's tends to point to being more introverted. If you are energized by being with people, that tends to be more extroverted. And there's a continuum with that. Like I can be with people all the time and still feel okay about it and be on, but then I need a couple of days, maybe to recharge. Some people are like, my daughter, she can do like one party and then take 2 weeks to recover. She's just a supreme introvert.
Really?
Yeah.
It might depend on the setting too, because I do get energy and like fulfillment and purpose from being around people, which I realize because I work remotely now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of lonely, right? So I know I need to be around people, and that's an important part of my life to have a community. Maybe SEMA is a unique thing where it's just a lot. And
well, let me see if this resonates with you. My daughter reminded me of this the other day. She goes, I love it. I love to see you when you're with your people. Right. And I used to say this before, this is contrary to what we were just talking about. So I changed it about myself. I don't really like people, but I like my people. Right. Yeah. And, at some level, that's true. I'm trying to be better about that. But what that means is when you're around people that you naturally are connected to, you tend to not have as much drain. Right. It's like if you've got videos playing and you're recording and you're, all these things on your iPhone, the battery's going to last far less time than if you're just, have email up or whatever for the day. Yeah. So I feel like that my brain anyway, works a little bit like that. Like the more on I am in settings that I don't necessarily love, I tend to get drained faster than if I'm in a situation where I'm much more, at home and with my friends and hanging out and having a good time. I don't know if that resonates with you.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the industry now. I guess maybe I'm I'm going off into a different place. I was thinking of like, I used to be a professional detailer, mobile shop. Now I'm, one of the faces of DIY detail. And I think of you as like, I don't think of Kevin as a detailer. I think of you as an industry guy. But your roots are in detailing. Could you tell me a little bit more about some of your roots and then how you got to this place? Because I think a lot of people love detailing like me, but maybe your aspiration is something more. Maybe it's to run the business instead of doing the detailing, and maybe it's to be working for a company. Maybe it's to start your own company. There's the aspirational aspect of not being the everyday in a mobile setting or shop setting. I also kind of like miss that too, but I wonder kind of, is your heart with detailing? Do you still detail? Like, how did you get here?
That's a long answer, but my so my detailing history is I have a web development company, and also, which is pretty much just, I have a couple extra clients that we've had for 15 years, 20 years. But we were doing like major app development when it was really, really hard. Now it's much easier to do this kind of stuff. But like, I ended up having this huge contract, like, multiple six figures a year just to build this piece of software for this company. And unfortunately, I forgot that at the end of this contract, I would also still need to eat and pay my mortgage and those kind of things. And so therefore, when that ended, I was like, oh crap, what do? I got to make some money. And I'm a worker guy anyway. So I was like, well, I know I built my first hot rod when I was like 15. And so I've been a car guy and detailed, and I've painted and all these different things. And so it's, let me open a detail shop. And so I opened one. Like we said before we started, I'm decent at business regardless of kind of what the business is. And so we did really, really well. And then from that came Detailer's Helper. And then I kind of stopped detailing. I actually handed my business over to a friend of mine, and I had a small little aviation side and a small little automotive side. And he's doing like multiple seven figures out of this business now. We have a ton of private jets where our airport is. And he split off the aviation into its own company and all this stuff, which is awesome. Great for him. Detailing's hard work. Like it's for those that absolutely love it and can do it, like when they're in their early 50s, like I am, like more power to you if that is what you love. I had a conversation with a guy, and he said, we were talking about his business and we're kind of doing some coaching and stuff. And he's like, I just don't like my business. And he said, I know I should. And I said, my answer to that was, maybe not. Maybe you shouldn't love your business. Maybe you should be doing something else. Like if this is not something you enjoy doing. So the way I like, if you don't like what you're doing, you either A, need to do it differently, or B, do something else. And so that's kind of what I faced him with, to say, like, if you do it differently, will you love it? And if the answer is no matter what I did, I wouldn't love it, then we need to start looking for other things for you to do that you will love, And that's, I think, so many small businesses get caught up, and 25 years later, they're, miserable, and they've been miserable for the last 24 years. So, which I don't want for anybody, but I love the detailing industry. It's done a ton for me. Michelle and I, early on and throughout kind of where we've been, we had an opportunity to kind of be like, not golden couple, that sounds terrible, but like an example to the industry of what like fun small business marriages can look like. And so we were really blessed with kind of being able to show some of that stuff. I was much more active on social media back then than I am now. But so like it's been really, and when Chris asked me to start doing this podcast too, I was like, well, this would be fun. I basically get paid to talk to all my friends that I've known forever. It's all these major players in the detailing industry, and make new friends. And so like when I look back at all that, I love the detailing industry. They're just like anything else. They're different. I like more people in the detailing industry than others. Right. So some people more than others, but I hope this to be true, that if people talk poorly about me, or they're like, oh, that guy's a dickhead, then please call me, because I want to know what I did. But I've tried really hard not to be that guy, and not alienate people. We call it being Switzerland, right? Is try not to alienate anybody. Because
Is that
I
good
don't know
as
if you're like
a
this
business or as a person? Like just
as a business and a person. We were very, very deliberate with Detailers Helper that we did specific things to protect the brand. And I know Chris is really, this is a big thing for Chris also. But like, for example, we would get pictures from like marine detailers. I had one picture in mind that a female marine detailer sent me a picture of her wearing the belt. Well, unfortunately, she was also wearing a very low cut tank top. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I can't use this, right? Like, this is just not part of our image, right? Like, I don't want cleavage as part of my brand image. It just was take that for what it is. It just wasn't part of our image. But like, I have friends throughout the industry, and I will say, hey, I talked to, this guy. I can't even use a pseudonym because I'm afraid somebody will pick up and say that that's the person. And then my other friend will say, oh, I hate that guy. I'm like, yeah, I realize you do, but I don't. I like both. I love both of you. I'm friends with everybody. Like, stop being such a jerk. And I've taken that personally. I've done that personally and with our own brand, which I think is kind of why we end up with a pretty good, diversity with the people that we've connected to. It's an interesting industry. I think people burn bridges way too much. They don't realize that, I've been here almost, I've been forward facing for like almost 15 years. And I could probably list at least 10 guys that have been with multiple companies from the level that you and I are at, right? Like with product companies or product, coding companies or whatever. And they've switched jobs, right? You only get to do that if you don't burn the bridges behind you, because eventually you just run out of bridges to go over.
So you're not saying going from one company to the next is the bad thing. You're saying it's actually, if that happens, it's because you didn't burn bridges.
Yeah, because I mean, if you get, hopefully you're doing such a good job that you get an opportunity to go somewhere else. And that may be because you're not really that fulfilled, you're not happy, whatever, at this other company. But what you want is for that other company to post on the internet. We wish Alberto is doing it right now. Actually, is it Alberto? Anyway, we've got guys in our industry that are doing it right now, and they will post. You want the company you're leaving to post, we wish this person the best because he or she was awesome, and we know they're going to be awesome at their next thing, right? Like,
yeah, I don't know who he is, but he left Rupes after 9 years. Todd Helm posted about it. I imagine he was very instrumental.
Yeah, I actually do think it was Alberto. Yeah, he's done so much, right? And so, like, you want that. Like, if you're leaving and no one talks about it, or people want to make up stories about why you left, then you've done something, and sometimes companies you just don't work through. Yeah. And it gets complicated, like your backstory you were saying. But yeah, being that way as a person really makes a big difference. And the way I explain it to people is like, there are certain people in my life, especially in this industry, that I have certain understandings about who they are as a person, right? And I call it like, I work by their rules in terms of communicating with them, because this person is, has a huge ego, or this person doesn't like that person, or this person won't shut up, or, all of those things. But as long as I know those rules, I can still be his friend and I can still deal with those things. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't impact me. But again, what we talked about earlier, I still have a conduit to that person that someone else may not have, because I know that, and just like with me, resting bitch face, or I talk too much, or whatever it is about my personality, I can tend to be a little abrasive, and those kind of things. If you know that about me and you're okay with it, then we'll be friends forever. Todd Helm
no one's perfect.
100%.
No one's even close to perfect.
And I think what we have such this ego problem in the industry, surprise of the day there. But because we're so emphatic about how we love ourselves, right? That we don't really, we don't like people because we've just decided we don't like them. For the most part, people make mistakes and they can be forgiven and all that. But I think it's a kind of a one and done thing. But the story I tell about Todd Helm, and Todd Helm is one of my closest friends. Like, I absolutely love that guy.
I really like Todd. I don't know him well enough to be like, we go super far back, but he's been on the podcast. We consider each other friends. Like, he trained me in paint correction at Rupes back in the day. So if you don't know who Todd Helm is, it's interesting when guys are like front facing and then they kind of fade into the wallpaper a little bit. And I wouldn't say that about him, but it's like he's not someone coming up in the industry right now is going to know who he is.
Right. Yeah. Unless you're probably on the East Coast, Southeast, where he is in Florida and that kind of stuff. But I mean, he's been instrumental in developing a lot of the products that you use. That's the thing. If you use that. But when we were there used to be this thing called Detail Fest. Bob McKee from AutoGeek, when he owned AutoGeek, is freaking genius. Because as vendors, you paid to go to this event, Detail Fest. Then you sold your products, but you're selling them out of the stock that AutoGeek had already purchased. So you just paid to work for Bob McKee for the weekend, essentially. Like,
yeah, because you're selling them, at a discounted price to AutoGeek. So you're doing AutoGeek's work. That's amazing. Okay.
So it was a great event. We had a great time. And, that's Ivan. I remember one year it was raining. Ivan was across from us anyway, but back in the Opticode days. But the first one we went to, this is like we had just launched the product. And so we were in the lobby at the Holiday Inn Express, which is across the street from where AutoGeek is, somewhere in that area. And I overhear, there's just some new company that wants to make a detailing belt. They're trying to be like our company and all that. And I look over, it's freaking Todd Helm. I had never talked to Todd in my life. And like he was talking smack to me and Michelle at breakfast at like 6:30 in the morning.
Wait, about you or to you?
Well, sort of to me, sort of about me. Like he was talking to himself, but it was for my quote unquote benefit, right? So that began our friendship, really, because like we didn't connect that much during that thing, but then over time, he and I have become very good friends. He's one of the nicest guys.
He will
do anything for you.
Yeah,
like
and I
think
think
that's the thing. So
I met him at this Rupes training, and I just thought he was really cocky and abrasive, and I maybe was right, and I maybe misread it a little bit, and there was also a couple of people in the class who weren't taking it super seriously, and they were smoking a lot of weed in the parking lot. And it was kind of a party, I think that was maybe just like distracting a lot of people. Looking back, he mentioned that there was one person who kind of annoyed him, and he was distracted. So. But no, Todd's a great dude. For sure.
But that's another example of like making that little thing that started off kind of quote unquote weird, because I then at some point he and I got to know each other, through whatever circumstance. And I don't even remember the exact circumstances, but then that built one of my closest relationships, right? Like I could take what he said at the Holiday Inn and just be like, F that guy. I don't want anything to do with him, which tends to be what most people do. Or you can look for opportunities to say, that guy's funny. First of all, that was hilarious that he would do that when he didn't know me and I was with my wife. But make that connection, right? Like that's sort of a big way that I've tried to handle myself in life in general, but especially in the industry.
Do you and Michelle have kids?
Yeah, we have two. We have 26-year-old and 24-year-old daughter. So
any advice on parenting that you feel like has worked or not worked over the years?
It's funny because like we really raised independent, strong young women. And the problem is that then you have to deal with independent, strong young women. So we butted heads a lot, but they both have a really strong work ethic. I'm not the new thing, which is not new, there's kind of like gentle parenting and love and logic and all that kind of stuff. Like that's not really how we did things. And I've made mistakes along the way, but like consequences, some sarcasm built in. We always talk about our, family love language is sarcasm. But like, this is a terrible fatherly example, but like they will tell me something and, that they're sort of struggling with. And my answer is like, have you tried not being a little bitch about it?
Yeah.
And like, what's funny is that they will actually call me for that talk, right? They know in their heart that there's something that they're dealing with that all they need to do is like suck it up and get it done. And that tends to be if they need emotional support, they call Michelle, if they want more excitement and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's like, I want to prepare them for the realities of the real world. And I think, how many kids do you have?
They're 8 and 9.
8 and 9. Okay.
My son just had a rough soccer practice where he's crying a lot because he fell down a lot at practice, was getting pushed around a lot, and it was his first time being to practice in a while because he has another activity at school, so that's gotten in the way of getting him to anyway. And I'm just like, I want to say, like, don't be a little bitch, the world is really hard. And I'm trying to kind of say that in a less aggressive way, and he's getting more emotional and crying, and I'm like, what in the hell do I do? Because like, this is sports, this is life, dude. Like, I love you so much, I'm trying to get you ready for it, and it wasn't working, it wasn't landing right, and I don't control how he's parented over there, and I'm sure different parenting styles, and I'm trying to figure out how to raise this man to be like someone who feels his feelings, but also don't be a little bitch, dude. This world is fucking hard, sorry to swear, like, and there's gonna be a lot worse things that happen to you, and get ready for it. Get up. I don't care if it hurts a little bit, like, you got to keep going. And like, how do you balance all that? It was tough. Like, I'm still kind of processing it because I know what the world's like,
Do you know what
I don't
do you
want
know
him to
what
be
the
soft, but I also
do you know
don't
what the
like,
root of it is? Like, what is the root? Like, was you just having a bad day, or like I
think he was having a rough day. Like, I'm like, what did you have for breakfast? And it was like, well, at his mom's, he had like cereal and a cinnamon roll. And we just found out that, like, we did an allergy test on him just because he's having some issues with, like, and it was like, he's allergic to gluten and dairy. It's okay. That's what he had. And then at school he had pizza, right? And then I pick him up and I take him to practice. So like, he's probably not had the right nutrition that day.
Yeah.
Which, it didn't start with me. It started at someone else's house, but I could pack him a lunch even though it's not my day. Anyway, I think he was having a rough day. It probably had something to do with food. I don't know what his sleep was like the night before. And again, I'm overanalyzing this stuff, but that's what I do, and I don't care.
That's all of that factors in. Just like you, if I had a rough day and you and I were talking, you probably asked me the same questions, right?
Yeah, I think he was. If I look at what he ate for nutrition that day, he was probably having like. He probably wasn't. He probably didn't have the best fuel, and I have no idea what his sleep was like. So there are a lot of things that I don't know, but probably he was having a tough day.
Well, and that's, we all have rough days. What I try to do with pretty much anybody, whether it's coaching or kids or whatever, it's like, all right, let's recognize first of all that today sucked. This completely went off the rails. And you can even ask him, like, did today turn out the way that you thought it was going to turn out with, when you got up this morning? And he may say, yes, I hate soccer. And then it's like, all right, well, let's find something else for you to do, because soccer.
He loves soccer. That's the thing.
Well, that's right. But I figured that, right? And so then it's like, okay, let's strategize together. First of all, let's kind of try to figure out what you just went through. Like it, and you can use it, say, okay, well, when professional soccer players, when they prepare, these are the things that they do, right? They make sure they get due sleep. They don't go drinking the night before when you're an adult. They get right nutrition, and this is what that looks like. Even if it means, all right, well, you have to miss out on this thing. So let's plan ahead for that. So then you're evaluating and coming up with the problem, and then you can help him come to the solution, which is, hey, all right, so we got another game coming up in 2 weeks, and I'm just throwing out stuff. But how do we make sure that day goes the way that you wanted today to go? And he's like, well, Dad, I think I want to make sure I get, and then depending on how self-aware he is, right? Like,
I was trying to be like, all right, so we just need to practice more, and like, maybe we should sign up for this like camp so you get more practice. And he just wasn't. It was the wrong time. Like, after we got him some good dinner, like, he turned around. But this conversation I was having happened before the food, and it fell on like more tears, and like he just was shutting down. And
you can do that where and it's hard in the moment, but you can say, hey, I definitely want to talk about today, but because I want to help you. But let's get some food in first, and kind of walk through those things. But I think if you can help him figure out, let's together identify the problem, but then help him come to the solution, even though you can tell him what the solution is, and you can guide that. And this is what I was talking about before with communication. The idea is to guide that person to the solution that you want them to recognize. Right? You need him to recognize that he needs good nutrition. He needs good sleep. He may have to skip pizza when all of his other friends can't do it. Not from and really giving him the strength to say, look, professional athletes don't eat a bunch of pizza before they go play. I'm not going to do that either. Not, well, I've got gluten problems and I'll crap my pants if I eat dairy and all, like, because that puts this weak mind in him. And I could be like, dude, put in the comments if you think I'm totally full of crap. But
no, I don't want him to be like, I've got all these issues. It's like, it's just, it's
because you want to empower him because it's one of my buddies, Marcus Collius. He's been on my podcast. Super cool guy. Has done quite well in his businesses, but he says every bad decision I've ever made is not, a lot of people will say all the bad decisions have been made under the influence of drugs and alcohol. He will say all of my bad decisions have been under the influence of fear. And so like fear can drive these different emotional and bad decision making. And so if he's afraid of getting hit or, all these different things, being able to empower him to face that fear is really at the crux of what. And you could take it one step further. It's like, all right, if you are afraid of getting kicked by the other players, then what we're going to do is for 5 minutes before, we're going to kind of go, and you could show him an MMA video. We're going to do what the MMA guys, and I'm going to kick you in the shin for the next 5 minutes. You ever seen those guys that do those? Like what MMA guys do is they actually, or you can have them do what they actually do, which is they'll kick like a board or a log or a tree to toughen up their shins. So they will over and over kick things.
Oh, so because he was saying he was getting kicked a lot in the shins. I'm like, you have shin guards. He's like, well, it was still getting hurt. And I'm like,
yeah, so you can have him.
Again, my mind was like, don't be a little bitch, but I was like, I don't think it was.
Yeah, but like you can, and so you have to implant the idea in his mind and say, hey, I know you're getting kicked in the shins a lot. You know who else gets kicked in the shins a lot? MMA fighters. Do you think they're weak or strong? Well, they're strong. Like if the kid resonates with, I want to be strong, right? Like you got to figure that part out. And then you can show him a YouTube video of those guys literally kicking logs or trees or whatever and say, do you think that hurts less or more than getting kicked by another 8-year-old boy?
Yeah.
Well, probably more. It's like, okay, so what do you think about this? Why don't once a day, put your shin guards on, go in the backyard and kick, there's got to be some post or wall. Something that he won't get in trouble by mom by kicking, right?
Yeah.
And have him start conditioning himself. But in my mind, if my goal is to empower my kids, to make them feel strong, independent, and then be there when they're not, to try to remind them that I have coaches. Marcus is my personal life business coach too. Like I have him to say, look, this is what you're supposed to be doing, and this is what you're currently doing. So how do we get there?
Do you think it's important for men to have a coach or a therapist, or no matter how successful you are, what do you think is good for us?
I think every person should have a coach of some sort, and that's not just because I offer that. I do that also, but I don't know any successful business person that doesn't have a coach. Honestly, ultimately successful, and that's that could be financial or whatever, but they have someone in their life, whether it's a free mentor or a paid coach or whatever. Typically what I like, so I pay Marcus in order to be to meet with me, and his brother, actually they both do it, but they do it a little bit differently. So I do 2 sessions a month, one with Marcus and one with Darren, but I pay for that. And the reason and they don't need my money. Let me just say this right now, that Marcus does not need my money. But it adds value for me in order to be able to pay for that and to make sure that I'm committed to what I'm doing. Because if he was giving it for free, then I wouldn't do it. But he's also a mentor to me. We've gone on trips together. He's one of my best friends and really feeds into my life. And so if you have not done that as a person, and you need to seek that out. And it doesn't necessarily have to be paid coaching. It can be mentors. It can be someone at your church or in your business groups or in your group of friends or whatever. A lot of times it's either guys that are like, Marcus is younger than me, but he has more experience in certain areas than I do. And so we work well together because I have something to offer him as well as he has something to offer me, because you need that synergy together. Again, back to what we were saying earlier. I'm not just trying to get something. from him. And I asked him, I'm like, dude, you're super rich, you're super successful, you're 6'4" and a beautiful man who's ultra fit and on fitness magazines. Like, what can I do? Like, how do I know how you fit into my life and feed into my life? What do I bring to the table? And he said, dude, being around you and seeing who you are as a person takes me from a 9 to like a 9.5 out of 10. And he's like, that makes such a huge difference in my world that I can't get enough of it. And so that's where that synergy, that's just an example of how the synergy thing works, I think. So, So get a coach. Yeah. Do you have one?
I don't have a coach.
Yeah, I think it's super important. And you can kind of, well, I mean, like Ivan probably speaks into your world a little bit. It's different because I
think Ivan has a coach too, which tells you something, because Ivan usually has an answer for everything. And if Ivan has a business coach as well, I think it's another vindication of what you're saying is like, excellence, you just you're always learning and growing, right?
Yeah. Well, and like Marcus calls it following the recipe, right? Like if I want to make the Southern Comfort apple pie that my wife makes, which does have alcohol in it, but it cooks out. It is the most awesome apple pie you'll ever eat.
Sounds so good right now.
It is so good. If you ever come to my house, I'll get her to make it for you.
All right, cool.
But if I want to make that, I can't just decide that I want to do, Braeburn apples instead of Granny Smith apples. And I can't use, Tennessee whiskey instead of Southern Comfort. Like I can't, all of the Jack Daniels instead of Southern Comfort. I can't do that. In order to achieve the results that she gets, I have to follow the recipe that she uses. And that applies in life, in business, in marriage, in parenting, in all of those things. Find someone in your world that you want the results that they have, at least in part, right? Like there are things about Marcus that I don't want for my life. I think I bring something to that equation that I think he wants out of my life. But I want to follow, like if I look at his fitness, he owned a supplement company and was a fitness model. So the dude is like a specimen. But if I want to have that physique, then I need to say, hey, what do you do for macros and what do you work out and what do you do all these things? I'll follow that recipe. If I want, it would be difficult for me to have the same sort of trajectory with business that he has. There's so many other factors. But if I want to have business success in my own business, I need to know his recipe. And so you need to find someone you want the results so you can ask them for the recipe. And that's an ongoing thing. That's really how that works.
I think it's, back to the detailer, is just find someone early on that you can ask a lot of questions to and you can hear the answers and hopefully develop a friendship and not just a mentorship. But I think having a mentor early as a detailer was super important for me. And I sought that out. And, there were a lot of swings and a lot of misses. And then I finally found a couple of good ones for sure.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious how you measure success. Like if I said, hey, Nick, are you successful?
Yes, I'm successful.
How do you measure that? Let's use a business term. What are your KPIs for measuring that success?
I mean, so are you talking about as a human or as a business?
Can you separate them? That's kind of what that's what I'll dig deeper on.
I mean, I think that the fact that we're growing as a business and I'm feeling fulfilled and I mean, I live so much in the content that sometimes you get lost in, did this get views? Did this lead to sales? I know when I feel like excited and creative, that's when I'm feeling the most alive. And so, like I get to be creative. I get to do podcasts and make videos, and I'm able to like look past a payday on Friday and be like, if I didn't get a paycheck, would I be able to survive? So for me, that's pretty good, right? But it's not like, is the house that I just walk by every day for $2 million, is that in the realistic ballpark? No, that's not. So I don't know how.
But would it make you happy? Like, that's the answer. Like, would that $2 million, I mean, would a bigger house make you more happy than you are right now?
I don't think it would. That's the thing. I like live in an apartment and like I would like more room, but I have it pretty good, Like I look at it like that. It's like I'm comfortable enough to like be able to put my kids in sports and not have to worry about like if I didn't get paid on Friday, like would I be able to survive? And for my whole life up until that, it was paycheck to paycheck. So I mean, financially we're doing okay, right? But it's like I don't own a house. I don't have a brand new car, but like my kids are healthy and I'm able to like think about more than just immediate needs.
Yeah.
But I think deep down it's like I'd like to find like a partner in crime to got divorced 5 years ago. Like I think that would add some fulfillment to my life for sure. Like I think that's probably the missing link. But there's always going to be missing things, right? And I like to be more physically fit and like more spiritually fulfilled and I'd like the business obviously to keep growing and doing amazing. So there's always like things I could think of that I want more of. I'm sweating, so I'm like nervous. I'm like, I feel like I'm on trial here.
You're not on trial. Like
no, I'm like talking to the business guy now. I'm like,
no, you answer. You're talking to the life guy, and that's what I want to bring. Okay. That's what I want to bring it back around because I think you answered that at first. You were concentrating. Like this is what's interesting about that conversational journey, right?
Yeah.
At first, you were all business, right? Like that's where you started these sentences, and then you started talking about your house. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, because your brain starts to go through this.
I just walked past this neighborhood. Like I live in this awesome community because I stay close to my kids, and it's a great community. But I walk around this neighborhood, and there was this house for sale, and I pulled the flyer, and it was $2.1 million, and I was like, that's a very expensive home. Like I feel grateful that I have a nice little apartment in this neighborhood, but man, like I'm not up to their level, right? It's so funny how the mind works. So yeah, that's just on my mind. It was yesterday that I saw that.
But you took this journey that you then reminded yourself live that I have a great apartment. I'm close to my kids.
Yes.
I don't have a brand new car, but that doesn't really matter.
But my car's running.
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
Still have fun cleaning it. It feels good.
And all that stuff. Like you walk through that journey and it's a how old are you?
I'm 38.
Okay, so at 38, when you were 23, you probably didn't have this self-awareness, but it's having that self-awareness to recognize that your definition of success is changing as you get older and as things change for you. Because I think if you ask most 23-year-olds, what's your definition of success? They're like, well, I want to buy a Lambo, I want to have a big house and hot chicks and whatever these things are, right? Yeah. But it's very materialistic in nature. And it's not a sustainable measure of success long term. Like it's just you just can't sustain that. Because I've met a lot of rich people, and very few of them are happy. Like, and we're talking about like majorly rich people. Like very few of them are genuinely happy people. They're either on like their third or fourth marriage, or no offense to like. Everybody has a different story, but they're either lonely or people are trying to get something from them or more money, more problems, all of that kind of stuff. But it doesn't matter if you're making $36,000 a year or $360 million a year. We all are going to have problems. But I know a lot of guys making that $36,000 a year that are far happier than the $360 million a year person. Because it's a perspective shift. And I've said this on Cruise Control on my podcast, and I had up on this, I'm looking up over to the side because my whiteboard is up here and I've used the same example. So forgive me if you've heard this, it bears repeating. I had all my numbers for the year on this board, down to like how much I need to make per day in order to hit this goal and all this stuff. And it was like, 10x and all that stuff, trying to unrealistic business numbers. And I was on a coaching call and Marcus made me erase it. And he's like, all right, so the next time we meet, I want you to have different goals. Like that's your goals. You're obsessing about it. You're unhappy, different goals. So now, and I added some stuff in here, but it says, have fun, serve others, build a life. And underneath life, it has stuff like gratitude, connection, network, spiritual gain, all of those kind of things. And then I have stuff like recognize the progress, look for evidence, and all these different things.
Yeah.
But if I do those three things, everything else falls into place. I make more money. I have a better relationship with my wife. I have a better relationship with my kids. If I want to get a different vehicle, I can get a different vehicle, all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
But if I don't, if I lost my business today, pick one of them. But if like my main revenue source was just disappeared today, I could still look at that and say, okay, I need to do these 3 things, and then I will build a new business. And I can still be successful even if that one thing is taken away from me, which is typically business and for most small business owners. And I had this conversation with a guy at an event in Miami, and he would tell you this. I'm not going to tell you his name, but we were talking about his life and his marriage and those kind of things. And he said, look, my wife has been asking me, literally begging me to work out with her every day. And I don't have time to do it. And so I asked him, and this was just a simple question. I said, all right, so tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up and you're going to have one or the other. You either get your marriage and your family, or you get your business. Which one are you choosing? You have to choose one. And like it clicked for him. In the next month, the dude hired a new person. He changed the way he ran his business. He was working out with his wife first thing in the morning, 4 days a week, changed his relationship, had nothing to do with me whatsoever. I just asked that question that separated, okay, so you do have that time. How do we figure out how to make you realize that you have that time? And dude, but again, it goes back to what I was just saying, which is, how am I measuring success? If I measure success by the fact I have 7 locations, I'm making $10 million a year in revenue and all those kind of things, but I'm grossly unhappy in everything else in my life, to me, that's not what success is. And I don't think it's sustainable.
I think that's really wise. Yeah, I think that serving others and having fun, those both feel like the ticket. And then what was the third one you mentioned?
Build a life.
Okay, what does that mean?
So my big thing is, don't give up your life to build a business. The reason we build businesses is so that we can have a life, is so we can have the life that we want, whether it's freedom or buying toys occasionally and those kind of things. But building a life means, I want to look again, if you take away my businesses, is my life a success? And I will say, absolutely. My kids are happy. I talk to them, every couple of days. My marriage gets better all the time. I'm healthy. I work hard for that, but I'm healthy and I'm fit and all of those things. The business part of it, the only reason I work is to finance the rest of my life. And that includes all of it, comfort and freedom and travel and those kind of things. And I'm not a rich guy, by comparison of some other people. You could say that, I do okay, but I'm still calculating, several, especially this time of year. It's all right, so if I don't make any money for the next 3 weeks, will I run out of cash? That, I still do that, right? That's part of this process. But I think so many people give up their lives to build their businesses, and I think it's just the bass backwards, as they say, way to go about things. If that's your, that can work for a very short time. And if you're in your 20s and unmarried and all of, don't have any kids and commitment, then go balls out, right? That's do your thing. But if you have all those things, don't, and this goes back to what you were talking about before.
Yeah.
Don't give up your life for your business, dude. 100% chance. If you close your detailing shop doors today, they'll just go somewhere else. That's the reality of any small businesses. If I close one of my brands today, they'll just go buy it somewhere else. I'm not curing cancer here. I'm just trying to sell products. And I think we get so caught up at especially in detailing, because that's where the ego bites you in the ass. I am so caught up in how freaking important I am that I'm making this car shiny. I said it many, many times, and probably on this podcast, we're not curing cancer here, man. We're just making shiny paint.
I do love, in this world we live in, the a bit of the rat race and a bit of the chase and the success and building this business and getting views and driving sales and honestly, when people are writing in the comments like, thank you, you've helped us so much, like that
fun.
means a lot to me. That's really fun. But when I'm really contemplating, like, this flu the last couple of weeks, if I don't have my health, what do I have? And if I'm not prioritizing like my relationship with my kids, what do I have? And then, having fun too, it should be a North Star, and like connection, right? And that's a big thing for me too. Again, working alone is, we're about to head to Omaha, and I'm really excited for it because I thrive, and I find like a few months after the last trip, I feel a little stagnant. You know what I mean? And
so what steps do you take to stay connected? I mean, I've worked out of my house for almost 30 years.
You do?
Yeah. So I mean, and I've only had a real job a couple times. So like,
unfortunately, there's a couple of communities in Salt Lake that I'll go to, but that's like an hour drive, where I'll go to meet up with people or do stuff. So the activities and the people that I probably hang out with are an hour away. So that builds in a 2-hour drive, and and then so that makes it a little bit of a prohibitive thing.
But like I have friends all over the world, right? And after this conversation, I feel like we've gotten closer and made more of a connection, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But like, I have almost no friends here locally, and I've lived here for 22 years.
Are you in Montana?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right. So I'm listening. Teach me. What do you do?
Yeah. So I'm in Montana. I mean, I'm a car guy. If I want to have a car show, I just have to go sit in my driveway, basically, because there's no car culture here. I don't hunt. I am kind of like, I'm more of an alpha male type guy just in general, but I'm not a hunter. I've been hunting a couple times, and it's stupid in my opinion.
People who love it, man.
But like, dude, if that's your thing, that's your thing. People think hanging out and talking cars is stupid. I like to build cars and build stuff or whatever, but I just like, there are not a lot of guys, and I'm an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. There's not a lot of those kind of guys that are in my, general sphere. So I have to do this. Like, this is what I do to connect with people. I, have phone calls and Zoom calls and Google Meets and all that kind of stuff, because I don't want to use the excuse of proximity to stop building relationship. Like, by the time we're done, I'll be like, hey, Nick, why don't we have a call every couple of weeks? Or I'll just check in with you, right? Like, we'll text each other or whatever, just to have that connection. And, that's another thing that I talked about, like making sure you don't give up these, this building a life is like, when you think of that person during the day, and I posted on Facebook about this, that person that you thought of today, you need to reach out to them. Like, even if it's a simple text, because
Chris said the same thing.
If you don't, so Chris and I do that a lot.
I have this one friend who I keep reaching out to, and he's my college roommate of 3 years. I thought he was my best friend forever, and we just lost touch and just barely text me back ever. Like, I feel like I've tapped out on trying.
And well, that's fine. Like, I think that's perceptive. I think that there are some I think all relationships, for the most part, of that type have a timeline. They're situational. I had a really, really close friend when I was building the Cobra. And we spent a ton of time together and talked and all that. So I finished my car. We kind of just didn't have anything else to talk about. And that relationship was pretty much done. And that's fine. I feel okay about it. Like, he went on with his life and I went on with mine, and totally okay. I think we have seasonality with relationships, especially when you're talking about things that were 10 years, 15, 20 years ago. I think some of those friends, like, very few of them. And I have a friend of mine, Joe, who, like, his group of friends that he went to college with, like, there's like 10 of them, and they get together like 3 times a week.
Wow.
At some point.
Amazing.
Like for men, like, and he's my age. And so, like, for men to have that at that age and to have sustained it is enviable to me, because I love that.
Yeah.
I love that connection that he has, but it's for most of us, it doesn't really happen, especially as guys,
Yeah. So just don't give up. Check in with your friends. Stay connected.
I mean, just like what I was saying with that, with saying nice things to people, we have these thoughts all the time, but we're freaking lazy, or we're afraid, or whatever. Like, dude, I'm 52-year-old guy, right? Like, so for me to compliment a woman in her 30s, there is a risk associated with that, right? Like, you don't really I think about that, but I do it in such a way that it's not creepy. At least I hope it. If she perceives it that way, that's her problem. And it almost never, I've never had that happen. The fear that I have has never occurred.
Okay.
But like when you think of these things, which we all think about, assuming we're decent people, just say them, whether it's a loved one or a friend, text the friend, call the friend, whatever. If it's within your personal relationships, like with your spouse or girlfriend or kids or whatever, definitely go over the top in communicating those kind of things. Because it's like we only have so much time, and you never really know how much time you have. That's the deal. My grandmother was 103 when she died, and I've got some longevity in my family, but she actually called us and had us come visit because we were the last one on the list to come visit her. Right after that visit, she died 4 weeks later. Most people don't have that opportunity, right? Yeah. Like you were here and now you're no longer here. Like most of us can't plan those relational, happy endings, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you never know. We really don't know how long we have, for sure.
So say the nice thing to the person that you're thinking about. Maybe we could end on that positive note, Mr. Kevin.
I like that. And go out of your way to disrupt someone's day in a positive way. We are so routine, whether it's at the checkout stand or, on an airplane or just walking down the street, disrupt that person, but and add some positivity, because you never know. Like, dude, they could be contemplating no longer being on Earth, and your positivity may change that for them, at least for today. Or they could just be perfectly happy and you just add a little bit more happiness to their life. It doesn't always have to be, morose.
And I love, again, that that's just free to do. You know what else is free to do?
Yeah.
Subscribe to whatever channel you're watching this on. Leave a 5-star review. And don't forget, 10% off at thehouseofrags.com with the promo code Nick, authentically.They. And then how can they get 20% off the Detailer's Helper Buck, Kevin, if they've been watching this?
Go to detailershelper.com and use the code Nick. I will make that happen right now. And if you mention the podcast from Detailers Roadmap and this podcast, I know that the guys at Detailers Roadmap, Patrick, is typically the guy you talk to. I'll let him know that we have some ways to sweeten the pot a little bit for you.
I wish Detailers Roadmap was around when I started my business. I would be all over that, because, man, it's a tough road, starting a business, and y'all have a great team over there. This was great, man. I felt like this went in a totally different. What's that?
This went a totally different direction than what I didn't really know which direction it would go. But we need to do this again. This was super fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think. I have a lot that I'm thinking about that I want to implement, but I want to disrupt someone's day in a positive way today. Maybe I'll say something nice to my kid's teacher when I pick him up from school today.
That's perfect.
You're the best teacher ever. Thanks for everything you do.
Yeah, that's
normally
awesome.
I keep the window rolled up and I go pick them up. They don't have.
If you can get specific, it helps a little bit. So, like best teacher ever, like they can get that on a coffee cup.
Okay.
Right?
So really make it,
like whatever, say my son came home the other day and he was talking about this particular lesson or whatever that he learned. And I just want to say that made an impact on him. And I really appreciate that.
I love it.
Then you can say, like, you can only use the best teacher ever once. You can use the specifics like 100 times.
Yeah. And best teacher ever, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure.
All right, brother.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Head over to detailersroadmap.com and get your one-stop success solution today.